I love shooting film because it's an interpretation of reality. You never know what you're going to get. Sometimes mistakes can turn into wonderful things that were unexpected. Nothing beats seeing an image come to life on paper in the darkroom. Back in my earlier days as a shooter, I went out to Mauritius to photograph a resort. They wanted me to show basically mankind's best attempt at heaven on earth. It just wasn't a really happy environment. Stockbrokers stuck their laptops sitting around a swimming pool, just tapping frantically away, until I left the resort and I went next door to a slum. And as I was walking down this little back street, I could hear laughter ringing out in the air, and I turned around and I saw this girl that was just kind of playing a little game of hide and seek. I could see her eyes just kind of poking over this little bit of tin, and I could tell that she was laughing because her eyes were just lit up. It was such a moving moment. It felt more real than anything I'd seen on the island so far. So I sort of bent down, and as I was pushing the button, I just thought, this is one of those really special ones. It was probably my favourite photograph I've ever taken. In order to really enjoy life, sometimes you need something to contrast the really good times with. And I have a family member who's been going through some treatment for cancer, and I've never seen this side of him. He's sending pictures of flowers to our family chat page, and he's appreciating things that I don't think he's ever really noticed before. And I think it's because of what he's going through that's opening his eyes to day-to-day beauty that's everywhere. In a very strange way, it's actually been a bit of a blessing. Sometimes you go through some pretty dark periods to appreciate the light.
One of the hardest questions to answer is, if there is a good God, why is there pain and suffering? I was approached by the Sydney Hospital, along with 8 other people, to create artworks that instill a sense of hope and that show resilience. So my part of the project is I'm heading to Tonga to photograph the people who have just had cardiac surgery. The first thing I want to do when we arrive is to have a look around, familiarise myself, try to find rooms where the light works, where there's not too much distraction. And of course, these people, having gone through surgery, they can't really go too far, so it has to be handy to where the beds are. That crop, yeah, that is good. That's really good. And then below will be kind of like these lines coming back on either side. Yeah, right there.
I think definitely the thought that you're supposed to be taking a photograph that's to represent the baby Jesus has got to make you stand up straight and think, oh, well, that's a big responsibility. But it's so nice to do something that's a little bit different and meaningful, particularly in a hospital. So my idea was that I really wanted to show the nativity scene, but from the perspective that Jesus was the light in the darkness. So I really wanted all the surrounds to be fairly dark and earthy and quite textural, and it all sort of leads in from dark to light, being the baby in the centre. I'd love for him to sort of almost glow, you know, as the light of the world. So it'll be interesting to see how it all comes together. So before a baby session, I like to have a think about colour and texture and what sort of theme I want from that session. And then I'll usually get out some wraps and blankets and things that match in that theme. And I'll get a lot more than I need usually, because babies often might have a little toileting accident while they're being photographed. So I like to have lots of extra things on hand. Like most artists, you want to be inspired when you're creating something. And finding that inspiration, I guess it comes from everywhere. When we lived in Fiji, I remember we used to occasionally go out in a tiny little putt-putt boat to this island called Lulavia, fishing and diving off the boat and avoiding sea snakes. And, you know, it was just the most beautiful, just sort of wild, tiny island. You could walk around it in about 10 minutes. So I guess I'm inspired by, you know, everything, everywhere. And I can't drive around without being inspired by nature or seeing a spot and thinking that'd be so perfect for a baby.
I've been asked by the Sand to take photographs of staff from the hospital as well as patients interacting with Jesus. I've also been asked to photograph a modernised version of the crucifix. I've been making a list with things that I want to really sort of tie into the shoot. I want to do lots of intimate, close-in stuff, but at the same time I want to sort of pan out and do a lot more sort of panoramic stuff that will show that people can take in the beauty around them and forget themselves to some extent. Because I think that when you're focusing on other things, you can be happier. I also want to show the beauty of people connecting, because that's another way that you can forget yourself, by feeling supported by someone else, and you kind of focus on them a bit. It's usually when I forget myself that things are really good. So, and that happens with every form of relationship I have. And usually it's just like photography. Once you shoot yourself into the right mindset, that's when the magic can happen. And it's not overthinking it, it's not being introspective, it's all about losing yourself in the moment and letting things naturally take their course.
Can
I go back in yet, or should I?
Maybe just wait just a little bit.
Okay. From the drawing fine?
Yeah.
The biggest problem with having this mask is all the hot air from your breath goes in and fogs up the diaper, so I can't really see sometimes.
Everything?
I haven't It's great to see exactly what's involved in the whole process, and it's amazing to see the person you're about to photograph go through such a major surgery and their heart being stopped, the machine taking over, and then everything coming back together again, being made whole again, and the heart beating again, and everyone just making that happen is amazing. Okay, here we go. So the plan from now on and how we're looking at the next few days, I'm keen not to get cameras in faces too quickly. I want to build up relationships first. I want to get that trust thing going. It's a lot harder with adults than with children. Like with children, you just show them the photo on the back of the screen and they're happy and they want another one and another one. Whereas with adults, you tend to have to build up more of a trusting relationship first, and then they'll give you the genuine expression you need for the photograph. I need to be able to concentrate, you know? I need to be able to try really hard to win. She's beaten me twice and I haven't beaten her once. Hopefully we can get these fantastic images to then give people who are in hospital this image of this child who's been able to conquer something they're about to face, so that they can be hopefully emboldened and some courage, and hopefully detach it from themselves, because it's so easy to get buried in your own suffering when you're really suffering. And it seems like the only way out is to try and develop another relationship, see how someone else has dealt with something. Visiting the hospital and seeing the way these people can just deal with amazing suffering with very little pain relief, a lot of thankfulness, a lot of hope and joy, and they just sing through anything. And in every level of the society here, there is belief and there's Christianity. The family units there with them, it's just beautiful to see how, I guess it's a mix of their faith and their family, just who they are, and it's beautiful the way they deal with such difficult times. Look, it's me.
Like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Molly was born at 2016. She was born a healthy baby, but I kept noticing the abnormalities when she's finished her 1-year-old birthday. That she's starting to losing some weight, look pale, those kind of abnormalities. I keep bringing her to Pete ward. They check up on her, and then they say it was fine until she have a big high fever one day, and we came to the outpatient. When she asked our data, she said, "Oh, I can hear a big murmur." And then she bring me the stethoscope, and I listened to it, and I was like, "Yes, I can hear it too. It's big. It sounds loud." I don't know if she's gonna live long or being sick and we're gonna be staying in the hospital every time and then on and off. And it's gonna be much painful, so I don't know what to do. Provide for my family or staying home and taking care of her. Until they said that there's a team coming, and if she's lucky, she's gonna wait for the team. If she's getting sickly and hospitalized every time, get worse, she's gonna go to overseas. But she was lucky to wait for the team. Yeah, it gave me hope. But yeah, it is a blessing. But you never get that opportunity like that much. They fixed your child hard, they give you support, the team do everything. All you do is just bring your sick child and they fixed it. Yeah, that's all.
Now that I'm a parent, I have to let my daughter make mistakes. I care. I don't want to see her hurt at all. If I'm always telling her what to do, she doesn't make decisions for herself. So it's the perfect parallel, really, the idea of God sees me the way I see my child. The years to come and the difficulty she'll have, it makes your heart just explode with thinking, how am I going to deal with this when she gets older and when all these things happen to her, which they will. It's just the way you feel about this little person running around that completely, half the time, doesn't want to listen to you. And then you just step back and think, that's how this divine presence is looking down and seeing me and thinking about all the things I'm going to stuff up with. But it's a real relationship. It's not something where you have to just act as though it's some detached, powerful thing that you can't interact with. God isn't behind all this bad stuff, which is the most important thing. I think when you're actually hit by something difficult, it's probably very easy to bash on God, and that's like, I think he's strong enough to take it.
I think until you have a baby, it's a very abstract concept. You know, people tell you how life-changing it is, but I don't think anything can really prepare you until you have your own child. It's like your whole world flips upside down, and I see it all the time with, you know, the newborn parents that come in. They all look a little bit shell-shocked when they come in. When Riley was born, he had what they call a soft larynx. So it's the muscle in his larynx wasn't properly formed, and it meant that feeding was very difficult for him. And so instead of having a proper long feed, he would get exhausted and fall asleep, but then wake up 20 minutes later wanting another feed. So there was a period, probably until he was around about 4 or 5 months old, where he would feed every 20 to 40 minutes, day and night. I felt like I was on another planet all of a sudden. It was just me and this baby, and it was just so intense because it got to the point where I started actually hallucinating. I was so sleep deprived. I honestly thought, I'm never going to sleep properly again. I totally understand why they use sleep deprivation as a form of torture, because this is just, unbearable. I do vividly remember the first night that he slept for more than a couple of hours, waking up in an absolute panic thinking, is he dead? Suddenly realising, wow, he slept. I got sleep. It was like dawn breaking, like angels singing to see, wow, this is what it feels like to feel like a human. And I see a lot of mums come in to my studio with newborns and they, at least on the surface, totally have it all together. And I'm so happy for them. But it's the dishevelled mums that come in that I'm like, right, I know what this is. I know how to help you. It's very true, the saying that when you have a child, you constantly have a part of yourself outside your body. I don't think you can truly understand the concept of God loving us like a child until you really have your own child and experience that parent-child love. I think you feel what your children are feeling and you hurt with them when they hurt. And, you're happy with them when they're happy as well. But, yeah, it's definitely hard to see, something so small and vulnerable go out into the world and have to experience life in its highs and lows without you being able to fix everything.
I've organised some time to go down to the hospital and talk to one of the ladies that I'll be photographing. And even though I don't subscribe to any particular organised faith, I'm really interested to see how people cope with suffering and try and integrate that into my art.
I was driving down to Sydney because I was doing study down here, and I got a phone call to say I had to come straight back. My husband came with me and we went in and she told me, and she was very careful, she looked me in the eye so that I would really hear it, and she said it's incurable. And I thought, oh, okay. And then I looked at my husband because I have a really nice husband and I didn't want that in his life for him. I'd already gone through it myself with my mother and I just didn't want him to go through that. And our son was 12 at the time and life just doesn't stop. I had to go and pick him up after school and I looked at him, I thought, oh, I'm never going to see him taller than me. My dad died when I was in my teens and I knew what it was like to have to live without a parent, one of your parents.
Yeah.
And I just didn't really want that for my son and I didn't want my husband to be on his own. I was anointed because I was rushed into surgery because I had a lot of tumours and stuff, things that had to be dealt with. And they came and they anointed me. And the peace that came at that time period and didn't go. It really honestly hasn't gone. They had written a list because I was going into surgery and someone had committed to pray for me every hour. And they
during the process, the operation?
Yes. And so I had this sheet with everybody's name on it and I couldn't let it go. And I went in for surgery. They opened me up and shut me up. They couldn't take anything out because there's too much there. And I kind of realised that night. And I was lying there and I thought, oh, I actually think this is not good. And I had worried before and then I thought, no, if I'm going to trust God with everything, I have to trust him with my son and I have to trust him with Charles. And so Charles and Ethan, if I died, they were in God's hands. And he looked after me when Mum and Dad passed away, so he would do the same. And I was lying there and I could sleep. I had a beautiful deep sleep. It wasn't a drug sleep. I know the differences because I've had them all now. It was an honest, peaceful sleep. And I woke up in the morning and the sun comes in the windows. It's quite beautiful. And I was lying there and I thought, oh, I could actually, if it was a thing that you just walked out the window to heaven, I would be quite fine. I had no fear, no nothing. It was just okay to go. God had my family. I was going to him and that was okay. The knowledge that when you do pass away, you are not leaving your family alone because God is going to be with them too. That's huge. That was huge. And that's made a very big difference in how... Well, I don't know how it is to be any other way. I will say for every single person that has cancer, the journey is different. But I think all of us go through some kind of fear, some kind of shock, maybe a bit of denial, because essentially it's loss. Essentially it's loss of what you had hoped to have, which was health and life in some way, shape or form. My oncologist uses the word disappointing, and I think that's a really nice way to put it. It's a disappointing, and I think it's okay to accept that sometimes, yes, you may get depressed and you may get angry, but you can't stay there for long because cancer exists and you can give it all the time you want, or you can put it aside and say, I'm going to live as much as I can until it trips me up. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know if that's weird or not. But
no, I think it's not at all. Framing it with the term disappointing, I think makes it more easily processed, and so you can then move on to things like mini miracles and and things that'll pull you through.
Yes. As a doctor said to me once, he said, Karen, he said, there are things way worse than dying, and living without hope is worse than dying.
Sort of makes me wonder how coping with this kind of thing without faith would go. Definitely think that it's a wonderful thing to have for those people who do have it in these kind of times.
I think it's just core to humanity, the need for hope. I think that is helping them through it.
Being confronted with a lot of suffering this week from small children and things like that, it does confront your beliefs that if God was all powerful, why doesn't he stop things that are terrible like that? And it's like one of the biggest questions. When you look at the Bible, that God himself came and suffered. So it's something that he endures with us, even if it's not obvious why something happens. I don't think we'll ever on this earth discover completely why things happen. Amazingly, awful things can happen to good people and vice versa. I believe God doesn't cause the suffering, that he's there crying with us, and that he, I suppose, has to let our free choice run its course. Today, we had some time off from the hospital. We went on a tour to swim with humpback whales. It was definitely something that echoed a perfect creation. The whales give you a hint of the future glory that is to come in heaven. The suffering we're experiencing in this lifetime, even if it's immense, cannot even compare to the amount of amazing things we have in our future. A glimpse of the beautiful things to come after this life.
First I'll probably end up doing lit from like front, but if it stays harsh I'll do backward for a little bit.
I feel a lot of gratitude towards everybody that's come out. Some people were still being treated. One moment actually stands out in particular for me, which was when I was shooting Karen standing next to my brother who was playing Jesus. She looked up at him and almost in a state of awe, because I think after everything she's been through, it was a bit of a crescendo for her. It was just a special moment.
So I really want the hay to sort of radiate, like part of the light coming off the baby. How are we? Come on in. Hi, Erica. Lovely to meet you. I'm Felicity. He's so cute. Just let me sanitize my hands and I'll grab him off you. Guys, just make yourself comfortable. It's okay, darling. Maybe if I just keep fussing long enough, he'll just fall asleep. Sometimes that happens. I think the shoot went well. It's always a little unpredictable working with newborns, but he was pretty good. He settled down in the long run. I think we got some really cute shots of him sleeping in the little manger, and we got some beautiful shots of him being sort of held by his mum as well, which was lovely. But generally, yeah, he went pretty well. He was fairly sleepy in the end.
Look to me. Okay, just a little smile.
My mind is sleeping.
Yeah, that's nice. It's like no smile. Do no smile. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Look after
We call it a zipper.
Maybe more.
A zipper. Yeah, like
Man,
zipper.
it's like all the way down.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Thank you. Yeah, it's good.
Okay, so good, cool. And then just look straight into the lens and give me a little smile. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, good. Thank you.
It's a new life
New life.
for me.
Yeah. When things are made new again, all the stories we've ever heard that resonated with us, where things end up happily ever after, it'll come true. The things that we're surprised that we get so emotional when we hear these stories, but it's knitted into our fibres, and it's just great to think of everything being fixed and better than ever. The reason why God gives me hope is because I know that no matter what happens in this earth, that we have something to look forward to that can't be destroyed.